Hi, my name's Rachel McLeod. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, mental health therapist, and emotional wellness coach. And today I want to talk with you about a common misunderstanding that people have about joy and symptoms of depression, anxiety, and post traumatic stress. And I want to talk about that because I think this misunderstanding sends people off on journeys that are not productive and counterproductive. And so I want you to use your energy very. I want you to healing from anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress is not a linear process to begin with. But if you're chasing things that don't really work, I'd like to avoid that for you so you can just follow your path and get your healing. Um, and that's really what I want to talk about here. And this came up because I was working with a client who shared with me that they were given advice to go find something to be joyful about. And I think that just set me off internally. I was like, oh, I wrote it down. I'm like, I'm doing a live about that. And that seems like a very simple statement, but that's really where this came from. I have had so many clients feel like failures after going and trying to be joyful, and when they're dealing with so many symptoms of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress, including things like numbness, dissociation, racing thoughts, panic attacks, right? And yet they're having these symptoms, but they're trying to be joyful, and it's not working, and they feel like even more failures than they began with. If I have something here in my eye that just decided to show up for me. Um, and if you've got symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, you're already being hammered and you're not winning. And you're already holding on to feelings of guilt and not being good enough. I don't want you to be set up for one more failure, because the joy thing doesn't work like that. And I want to talk about how it does work and how to help you get your joy back, because that's important. It is part of your birthright. And if you don't have it, there's a problem, right? And I want to show you how to solve that. Okay. And I've written my notes down here so I don't take us into the weeds. um, and But I want to talk about a couple of other things surrounding this to really flush it out a little bit more for you. People also will give you the advice, just be grateful, and gratitude will fix everything. And now I think gratitude is a phenomenal thing. Um, and perhaps it would, but I think if you've got symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, it just, these things, it's hard to shift your brain into states of gratitude when your brain is sending you into states of survival. And that survival state and that survival system is a very hard function and part of the brain to override. It is the overrider of all other brain functions, including joy and gratitude, which I think those guys are kind of friends, right? And so your survival system can override these at any time. And so if you're all trying to be joyful and your system is sending you into fight, flight, freeze, faint, fawn modes, and you're in distress, you're not going to feel very joyful. Right. And so that takes us back to the loop where, gosh, it's this gratitude, joy thing's working for everybody else and it's not working for me. Um, this is a brain function thing. And really, what I shared with this client was that this work that we need to do with joy is to liberate it, uncover it, unbury it, not go find some and slap it on top of all your symptoms. That's not how it works. We don't, that's not, then you just have pretty terrible symptoms. And I'm telling you, I've met enough clients, I'm good at this too, who have, out of survival needs, really needed to be very joyful people, right? But that doesn't mean underneath the joy that there's not a lot of illness. And that's not going to, I want to say, this dressing up a pig thing. I feel like I've seen that in a cartoon recently. I don't know. But I like pigs. So this doesn't match. But you see what I'm saying? Like putting a prom dress on something that wants to roll in the mud, like symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress. Absolutely. They want to roll you around in that stuff. And so putting joy on top of that is not how you access your authentic, un, like unextinguishable joy, which is a deep well within you. And but what you can do is you can cover it up, you can bury it, and trauma does that for us, right? Symptoms of depression, anxiety can cover this joy so that it doesn't come out anymore and you can't access it, you can't live into it, and maybe you just walk around feeling numb or dissociated or in racing thoughts or in a panic distress state. And so so really this work to get your joy back is not to go find it, it's to uncover it, it's to liberate it, it's to release it. And I'll tell you what's hanging on to it is it's like this, like trauma, right? It's just grabbing onto it, shame, guilt. It's just holding it down. And it's one of those things, if we can get some of the shame off of it, it'll start to rise. It's like a hot air balloon. I'm certain that it's like a hot air balloon because this is how, as I do this work with people, I go after the symptoms, right? And then all of a sudden the joy starts popping out, and I'm like, yeah, it popped out like super early with this one client. And I wanted to surf those neural pathways in and be like, where does this go? But I controlled myself, and I was like, this is her joy does not need help with where are you, let me go find you. That's totally me being nosy. The truth is, her joy just needs us to get these symptoms out of the way. That's it. So it's like back to work, Rachel. Stop gawking at the joy and get back to work. Um, and so, and that's really the deal. And I see that happen over and over and over again. I will get a client and they will be like, I'm looking at their symptoms and how often they're happening, when they're happening, because that's really how I go after them and how I teach people to go after them is to map it out and then get going. And they'll come with a ton of symptoms. And I have to remember what I was talking about. Oh, and we just start clearing. We start clearing, and the brain has a process for resolving symptoms. And I talk about this in so many of my videos, but I'm going to talk about it now briefly. The brain's process is to, if you can, is a lot of these symptoms are experiences that you've experienced that your brain could not move through its natural healing process. And its natural healing process happens when you have events and situations that take place, and it moves through this process of understanding it and moving the emotion, and it moving the emotion really first, and then understanding it, and then figuring out and then releasing stuff that you don't need. It's like a food. It's like your digestive system, right? You eat it, you break it down, and then your small intestine says, "We don't need this. Send it to the large intestine and get that out of here." And then it takes some of the material and it makes your cells and your hair and all your good things. Your brain's process is like this as well. It will encounter things it doesn't need anymore and release it, and then it will come and it will understand stuff and hook things up and make your brain. I want to see your cells and your hair and your thing, but in your emotional, mental, subconscious programming. That's what will make the neural pathways and the connections and functions, weave things in there and go. And it really helps to update your subconscious programming, get rid of a bunch of brain trash. It's a really beautiful process. But there are sometimes we have these events that cannot make it through that process, and they get stuck right at the gate, and your inner healer will be like, "Ooh, look at that thing, I need to move through the gate," and it will start, and your survival system will notice the distress that it causes your entire system, and it will push it back, and your inner healer grabs it again back, and your inner healer and survival system will do this for decades, an entire lifetime, this one fight right here. And so when we can use your brain function and interventions that help your survival system, that work directly with your survival system to say, hey, let some healing happen here, guy or gal. Then, and so these interventions do that, and it will open the door. It will open the survival system will allow healing to happen, and your inner healer, it's your prefrontal cortex, will grab stuff up and pull things through, and your survival system will actually let it. That process of grabbing something through takes about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And really we want to take those events, chop them up into itty bitty pieces, because the smaller they are, the easier they are to get through. And we're moving those things through, and they're finally making their way through. And this process right here is usually blocked because of the emotional distress. And that emotional distress could be mental or it could be somatic, which means it's in your body. Maybe you logically feel no pain whatsoever, but maybe your gut is in knots about it. That distress will put your survival system into alert and will stop the healing process. So we want to use these interventions and my favorite ones are emotional freedom techniques, thought field therapy, energy medicine, and EMDR. And these are the ones I teach my clients and people, anyone who wants to learn. I teach these. As many people as I can teach, because we should be able to work with our brain. And if our brain cannot make it through its process on its own, gosh, let's get in there and help it out. Because when it can get that part done, it's off and running. It doesn't need our help with the rest of with the rest of the process. Okay, every once in a while, like 5, 10% of the time, it needs some help back here. But it's such a small amount that I don't even worry about it until the end. Because this stuff we know is going to need support. And then at the end, that gives you your prefrontal cortex time to sort itself out and then say, hey, you know what? I'd like some help over here. And then we can do that. But this stuff we know that it's blocked with. And so we can move that through. And as we get stuff through, we are changing inside your inner world. You got your joy right here inside your inner world. All of a sudden, if this thing right here that's holding on to your joy gets picked up, chopped up into a bunch of little pieces, and moved through the healing pathways, and all of a sudden, it turns that thing into something useful or gets rid of it altogether. And now your joy is rising, right? And then we're going to go grab this other guy over here and we're going to chop it up into a bunch of little pieces and feed it through your brain's process. We're going to walk it through that process using these interventions. And pretty soon your joy will rise and will come out and will happen again. And you will start noticing this. And that's how it happens. I have clients tell me all the time, like, oh my gosh, I thought I was never going to have any joy again. Or I knew I had to do this work with you because I can't go another Christmas without feeling joy. That's my favorite holiday. That's a direct quote. If she's watching this, she'll hear that, pick that up. But but you see what I mean? Like we want to bring it from within out. We want to paint your life with that joy that's from the inside out. That's the stuff that's rich. That's the stuff that's yummy. That's the stuff we want to put in your cup and fill with those babies of yours. Like fill your cup with some of that inner joy and then pass that stuff around. That's the stuff that's nourishing. That's the stuff that's nourishing to your relationships, to your business, to your employment, to your creativity. That's the stuff. That's the juice. And I'm telling you, it's already in there. It's just covered. It's just covered under the trauma. It's buried. And let me tell you, some of you, I'm hearing you. You're like, if it's buried under my trauma, it's never coming back. It's too much trauma. And I'm going to tell you that's not true. I've done this work with some incredibly traumatized humans, and their joy returns. I didn't know if it would. You and I, same. I was like, holy cow. I remember the very first person I worked with, I was like, does anybody ever heal from this? Yeah, turns out they do. Brains do this. And so I would tell you that, yes, you might need there's a strategy for you. And I've just worked with so many people there, and I've learned to use so many different strategies, right? And so we can find one for you. If not, if we means me and the collective universe of therapists, that yes. And I also know that with the right guidance, you can find this within yourself as well. And one of the best steps to do is to you grab an intervention and start using it. And then get support. Figure out what your next step is. And if this is something you want to talk with me about, I will absolutely spend up to an hour with you looking at your symptoms, looking at your goals, looking at your situation, and helping you figure out what your next steps are. And so if that's something you're interested in, grab a spot on my calendar by going to rachelmcleod.com/call. Oops, sorry, call. I'm pressing buttons over here. I thought I ended my live. But I'm going to answer questions right now. But I'm going to put this in here so you can access that. Grab a spot if that's a conversation you want to have with me. But I want you to know there's so much joy possible. And I want to tell you that this is one of the reasons why I have invested in learning new interventions, because I have really the way systematically eliminating symptoms and resolving, getting rid of symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. I have not met a symptom that the brain cannot resolve. I just haven't. And so this feels to me like I've been on that journey for a very, very, very long time, since my own journey. And I'm at 12 years on that. And that feels very old hat. When you're learning a new skill, it's like you just got to learn it. You're in it. There's no space for learning anything else. And I'm at this point now where it's like, it's just automatic. And I'm also teaching people to do this because it is that systematic. And it's really fun when people are working with their own brains and they're getting their own results, because that does something for the inner healing that is just gorgeous and beautiful. Because you get to become your own healer when you heal yourself, and when you can get rid of one symptom. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. You can get rid of another. And one of my clients told me that they woke up in a panic attack last night, full blown, hadn't had one of those in years. And that they started using emotional freedom techniques and on their way. And then they got up out of bed to go take their fast acting anxiety medication. And before they got there, they had calmed down and they didn't need to take it. And then they were like, I think I'm okay. And they laid back down. And then we celebrated their amazing self-care and how effective that was. And then they were talking about how comforting that was to know that if they were to face something like that, they could do something about it. And that is the case. And excuse me, my friend, the train is going to come by here. But gosh, and in this person's case, we need to go find where the root of those major panic attacks are, and that's not her pressing issue at the moment. So, but we got our eye on that. We're coming for it. Because it's hard to feel joy when you're hypervigilant, when you're like, when's my next panic attack? That's a survival state. Hypervigilance is about survival, and that is not where joy comes through. So we need to move that out of the way so your joy can come through. Okay, and I want to tell you what buries, blocks, and covers joy, just so that we're clear, we're on the same page. And one, we know symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress cover and block that. And if you don't know what those symptoms are, then I would encourage you to look. I like Mayo Clinic's little guide to symptoms, and look at those, because you might be surprised that more of the challenges you're going through are actually just symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. I was talking with a client recently, and who has PTSD. They're the happy kind of PTSDer, and but their symptoms manifest by taking care of everyone else, living in chaos and stress, and not taking care of their own needs. And so for them, they can't measure if they're happy or sad. They have to measure how much chaos is in their life, right? Because that's their trauma showing up. And so if you look at this stuff, you can really start to see those symptoms. The other things that block your joy from coming out are emotions. If you have so much anger, rage, fear, terror, panic coming out, your joy is not going to have room to move through. And really, those emotions are what your survival system is alert with those and blocking healing. And so those emotions are just whirling around in the back of your brain, fueling your survival system. We don't want your survival system to get fueled up anymore. We want to move all of that emotion and energy into the front of your brain where your morals and your values and your problem solving, your creativity is. That's what we want to fuel. The interventions I talked about help the brain make that transition to move that emotion so that you can actually use it in the front part of your brain. And once that stuff's moving, joy can come right on through like all the other emotions. Right? But if you got it, if it's blocked, everything's blocked, then it cannot come through and you will not find your joy. So I really want you to hear me when I'm telling you your joy is in there. It's really just about you uncovering it and going within to find it. Don't go out to find it. It's not out there. We might want a partner. We might want a better job, more money, all these things. Great. I'm for that. But those will not bring your joy out from within you. That's your job. And that's your brain's job, more importantly. And if your brain is not doing that job, we need to help your brain. And you can. So let's see. And then the other thing that I wrote down that blocks your joy from coming through is the survival states. It's very difficult to be joyful when you're in a survival state. If you're in fight, that's that irritability, anger. If you're in flight, you're running, you're trying to get out of there away from this. Those are not joy states. And they're very all consuming because um, your thinking center, which is where your inner healer is, your problem solver. Um, their job is to solve your problems. So if you've got a problem moving your anger through, that is all your thinking center is going to want to focus on. And if it's focused on something, that means it will lock itself in there, and this will be a theme of many of your thoughts all day long on repeat. And so we want your thinking center to let it go. But let me tell you, home girl or homeboy is not going to let that go until it gets what it wants from there because it is committed fully to its job of resolving your problems. And so if you want any peace in your life, I would help that part of the brain get what it wants. And these interventions help it get what it wants because it will actually be able to pull it up and through and put it in its little place and where it'll pick it apart and it'll sit there and do that. And while it's doing that, and when it's finished doing that, you will be able to think about other things, the happy things, the good things. So this fixation on the negative is actually a part of how the brain functions. And I do not encourage anyone to fight brain function, but to actually work with brain function. And if you have a fixation on the negative, that does not mean you're a negative person. That means that there is something there your brain wants to heal and resolve. And it is stuck there with the focus. And anytime that it gets enough focus juice in your brain, it's going to go right there. And you're going to be fighting with it for focus. This is why people have difficulty concentrating because your brain wants to go to the left and you're like, I have to get to work. I have to get these kids to, I have to, and you're fighting with your brain. You know what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't even know. Okay. But anyway, I just want you to understand that your joy is in there and it is well and it is life. Oh, I know what I was talking about. I was talking about energy medicine because this is like I don't want to say old hat because it's fun every time. But it's like anyway, I've really it's one thing to eliminate symptoms, but I really right now am on a kick to um, reestablishing and reconditioning in joy. And that has not been a major function of mine. Because I'm like, if I'm just going to help them get rid of the symptoms and their self will take care of the rest. And that's awesome. That's fine. But I'm finding that there are things we can do to repattern and recondition joy in so that we can kind of like eliminate symptoms, right? But also do the things to recondition joy and reignite and reestablish those neural pathways and connections. And so we can kind of do this both at the same time. I'm experimenting with this a lot. Um, and, um, and it's bearing really wonderful results. And so, um, anyway, I'm not certain why I'm telling you that. But it is a part of what I have put into my program. I have an 8-part program called Inner World Transformation, and it is in 8 parts, and I in there, I this is the foundation of my 8-week intensive. I have a coaching program where I help people dive in and work at a pace that is set up to resolve their get rid of their symptoms in 2 to 6 months instead of 2 to 6 years. And so that's this inner world transformation is what I've been using with my clients for years now, and coaching and therapy clients. Basically, if you come see Rachel anywhere, this is what we're doing. Um, because it matches and it just walks people through the process in just the right pace. So, but I've made this available for self study. And so people who are not ready, do not, are just are people that want to do it themselves, or people that don't want to make an investment for coaching because they want to use their insurance, or for any number of reasons, want to access to the program. I've made that available for self-study. And in here, I've put some of these interventions in that I'm seeing is getting results for joy and building in joy. And so my intensive, I have for my intensive coaching clients, I offer free group monthly coaching for the life of my business. And so I'm always teaching them extra goodies, and they are really helping me experiment with these things, these joy pieces. And then as I'm doing that with them and myself, which I'm loving them, I'm really adding them into the inner world transformation program for self-study, and to start combining it for the new people that come in. You'll be getting that from ground one, which is really a lot of fun. So I think I was just saying all of that because it's just fun talk for me, because I'm so excited about it. Because what happens? What happens if we do the symptom elimination and the joy reconditioning at the same time? I don't know. I want to find out. Anyway, that is that's what I've got going on. And if you want to look at that, the programs, or even just try one out, I've made the very first part available. It's called Inner World Transformation Jumpstart, and um, it's the first strategy that I walk my clients through. Plus, it's the training for 3 interventions that you can use. And okay, let me explain this right. You get trained in the interventions. I have videos for that. And then you get a strategy to learn how to apply the interventions in a very strategic and targeted way that you can use over and over and over again. And I encourage people to do 2 hours a day of this work, because we need to get that brain moving and get it doing what it wants to do, get these symptoms moving out. But what happens is you use this framework to guide yourself through some of the most amazing sessions you've ever experienced on a brain function level. And if you do 2 hours a day, that's 14 hours. That's like meeting with a therapist for 14 weeks, but you do it in 1 week's time. And so I've said, and that's one of the reasons why this work goes so quickly and you get such dramatic results, because this brain function, the brain works so fast. It's electrical. And we're using these emotions and the neural pathways, all of that stuff is an electrical process. And so it's so cool because the transformations happen so rapidly. So anyway, I could go on and on. And Natasha Griffin says, I would like more information about your program. Okay, let me tell you that I have added in the title section of this, how to learn more about how to finally get rid of your symptoms. Go to rachelmcleod.com. And in there, you will see an opportunity. It says start here. And you can watch a webinar that I've done, 5 steps to ending anxiousness, being present and showing up, being able to show up authentic and empowered in every area of your life, because it's true. And then there's the next one is join my free Facebook group. And I encourage you to do that. I have trainings on the interventions. If you're somebody who's like, I don't want to try a program, I just want to use the interventions, go there, watch the video trainings, and try out those interventions. Start today. It's just fun to have so much power to work with your brain and to help yourself heal. And you'll notice transformation right away. Like if let me tell you, if I'm trying a new intervention and it's not getting results within 10 minutes, it's out. And 10 minutes is, I'm being generous. I'm just being generous, because the interventions, emotional freedom techniques, thought field therapy. I mean, the intervention that I love the most for trauma processing takes 2 minutes. Now, obviously, one trauma is made up of many little pieces, right? So we're chopping that thing up into little bitty pieces. Each one of those takes 2 minutes, maybe. Each one of those takes 30 seconds, and maybe it takes a whole 10 minutes to resolve a whole memory, trauma, experience, emotion, whatever we're working on or targeting. And but I want to take a piece of this thing and use an intervention on it, and it should be moving fast. Like I said, 10 minutes is a long time for this little piece. I wanna see different things happening quickly, and with those 3 interventions, I do. And so those are the interventions I know work. Some of you have other tools. You can use the strategy with those tools. You can bring them in. I encourage people to. If you're trained in my brain spotting or um, breath work is one that people are bringing in. Yes, all of these mind body interventions work. I just know that these ones work fast, and we can rely on them, and we can swap them up and figure out the right combination for you. Some people will like this intervention for this, other people, or that same person will use this for that and this for that. That's great. And they discover this. You're learning how your system works. You're learning how to work with your brain, and brains like a variety of things. So I could go on and on about that. That felt very juicy. And like I wanted to talk about things the survival system likes and the subconscious mind likes. I might have to do a live specific to that. But the more tools you have for yourself, I think the better. I like this alternative use of EMDR. It's a device. It broke. I broke mine. So I instead of just like I don't have another option, I used my other options, and it was great. But I'm like I need to go get. I carry it with me, and it just gets banged up, and I break it anyway. As a matter of fact, I'm training. I'm giving a training on that alternative use of EMDR. That is generally tolerated well by most everyone, where EMDR is not always, it has some nasty side effects if it's not the right fit for you. But this use that I'm going to be training people to try out for themselves. I haven't noticed that, and so I'm going to be doing that in that Facebook group, Women Releasing the Baggage of Anxiety, Depression, and PTSD, on Saturday. So if you want to be in there, definitely go to my website, join the group. um, yeah. So that's what I have. I don't see any more questions, and I feel like I didn't talk about joy as much as as much as just like because I think that the more you move the symptoms, the more the joy is just natural to us, and it's just in a state. It's just been repressed and suppressed by all the symptoms, and it's just getting those out of the way, and it allows that to return. So that's it. So don't feel like you've got to go out there to get joy, or you've got to go out there and cover up your life with joy, or that joy is going to be the solution for you. Really, I want you to hear, uncover your joy, get your joy from the inside flowing outside, and covering your life from the inside out. That stuff's just the gold, liquid gold. So, okay, wonderful hanging out. Talk to you later.